It begins in the quiet hours of the morning, somewhere between the sound of tires rolling across an empty highway and the hum of a restless heart. Keith wakes up on his tour bus, the clock flashing 3 a.m., his body aching from the road, his throat sore from another night of singing 2000s who will never really know him. The air inside feels heavy, the kind of silence that doesn't soothe but 19 years of marriage, 2 daughters, a world that once believed in their fairy tale love story, and yet, in that lonely hour, everything feels impossibly far away. The applause has faded, the lights have dimmed, and what remains is the echo of a man wondering how love this strong could turn into something so fragile. It all began in 2005. At a glittering event where the brightest faces of Australia and Hollywood collided. She was the elegant actress whose smile could soften even the hardest hearts, still recovering from a very public heartbreak. He was the charismatic country singer with a reputation for charm and sincerity. Yet behind the smile, there was always something guarded in his eyes. They met beneath the golden lights of that evening, surrounded by cameras, laughter, and polite conversation. For a few moments, the noise around them disappeared. The way they looked at each other said what neither dared to voice, that maybe this meeting wasn't coincidence at all. But then, he vanished. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. She waited, thinking he simply wasn't interested. In truth, he was terrified, afraid of breaking something that hadn't even begun. 4 months later, he finally gathered the courage to call. The spark they had felt that night reignited instantly, and soon, they were inseparable. By the following year, under a sky scattered with candles and whispers, they said their vows in Sydney. It wasn't the spectacle the press had hoped for. It was intimate, tender, and filled with tears. He held her hand so tightly, as if he already feared the day he might have to let it go. The world called them a living love song, 2 souls who had found in each other what fame and fortune could never provide. For a while, it really did seem like that. But fairy tales have shadows too. Only 4 months after their wedding, the perfection began to unravel. She noticed a change, small things at first, a certain distance, a quiet sadness in his eyes. Then the truth came crashing down. He was struggling with something far darker than exhaustion. The man the world saw as strong and charming was fighting an old enemy. It wasn't gossip. It was real, raw, and devastating. Most people would have walked away, but she didn't. She fought for him with a kind of love that was both fierce and selfless. Surrounded by close friends, she staged an intervention, not as an actress or a public figure, but as a wife desperate to save the man she loved. It was a night filled with tears, fear, and an honesty that left no room for pride. He listened, and the next morning, he checked himself into rehab. For 3 long months, they were apart. He faced his demons while she faced the world alone, refusing to let their story be reduced to another tragic headline. When he finally stepped out of rehab, he looked lighter, humbled, changed. He called the experience the hardest but best decision of his life. From then on, their love story shifted from romance to resilience. They had survived something that destroys many, and it brought them closer. Or, so it seemed. In 2008, their world filled with new light when their first daughter was born. They named her Sunday Rose, a name that carried peace and promise. He flew halfway across the world just to be there for an ultrasound, to hear the heartbeat that reminded him why he'd fought so hard to heal. 2 years later came another miracle, their second daughter, Faith. With their 2 girls, their world felt whole again. They built a home, far from Hollywood's glare, in a quiet corner of Nashville, where music and family filled the air. They seemed to have done it, overcome addiction, survived distance, and rebuilt trust. To the public, they were the proof that true love could endure anything, but even strong love can be worn down by time. In 2014, tragedy struck. Her father passed away unexpectedly, and the loss broke something inside her. She was his little girl, again, standing before the reality of death and absence. He dropped everything, his tour, his commitments, and flew straight to her side. At the funeral, he stood before her family, guitar in hand, and sang Amazing Grace. His voice trembled, his eyes filled with tears. For everyone watching, that moment became the embodiment of love, the kind that doesn't fade when the cameras turn away. People whispered that what they had was real, the rare kind that could weather any storm. Years went by, and they continued to be each other's safe place. He called her his anchor. She called him her soulmate. They laughed together at award shows, held hands on red carpets, and raised their daughters quietly behind closed doors. But love doesn't always end with a fight. Sometimes, it ends with a whisper you don't even notice until it's gone. Somewhere along the way, something shifted again. The road got longer. The silence is heavier. Their careers, once parallel, started running in different directions. She threw herself into back-to-back film projects across Europe, while he lost himself in the rhythm of endless touring. Nights turned into weeks apart, and distance, once their test, became their routine. By 2024, fans began to notice the change. Fewer joint appearances, fewer smiles that reached the eyes. Rumors circulated quietly at first that he had a separate home in Nashville, that it was just for work, though whispers said otherwise. When asked about life and fate, his words seemed uncertain. He hesitated on live radio when asked whether destiny had brought them together. No idea, he muttered after a long pause. The internet caught fire. This was the man who once couldn't stop declaring his love. Now he couldn't find the words. Then came the interview that sealed it in people's minds. Asked how he kept his marriage strong after so many years, he smiled faintly and said, "It's a job." Just 3 words, but they hit like an earthquake. Within weeks, reports emerged that she had filed for divorce. 19 years, 2 children, in a world of shared memories quietly ending behind a courthouse door. Their last photo together showed them poised and smiling, but their eyes told a different story. When he was later asked about his personal life, he didn't deny or defend. He just smiled and said softly, "Life's in session." It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't even grief. It was acceptance, the kind that comes when a chapter truly closes. Still, the world searched for meaning in the silence. Then came his comments from a newly filmed reality series about life on the road. In one scene, recorded before the split became public, he spoke about the loneliness of touring. When you wake up on a tour bus at 3 in the morning, sick and exhausted, in the middle of nowhere, and you haven't slept, he said, you start asking yourself why you're doing it. The only answer is because it's what you're born to do. But it was one small detail that ignited controversy. He said he missed his friends before he mentioned his family. Friends first, then family. To some, it was harmless. To others, it was a quiet confession that the woman he once called his everything was no longer the center of his world. Rumors began to swirl again. This time around, a young guitarist who had joined his tour. At one concert, he performed a song that had been written years earlier for his wife, but he changed the lyrics mid-performance, replacing her name with the guitarist's. Fans caught it immediately. Within days of the divorce news, that same guitarist posted a cryptic message on social media Black Square, with the words "announcement coming soon." She later released a teaser for a song about resisting forbidden feelings. The timing, too many, was impossible to ignore. Through it all, she remained silent. Friends said she was blindsided, though her public face never showed it. In a recent interview, she spoke about healing, about finding peace after devastation. No matter how painful something is, she said softly, there's always a way through. She focused on her daughters, on calm and recovery. At a fashion event in Paris, she appeared radiant and serene, holding her daughter's hands. No bitterness, no public jabs, no tears for the cameras, just quiet grace. He, on the other hand, chose silence. No denial, no explanations. Some called it maturity, others called it guilt. For a man who once poured his soul into love songs about her, his silence said more than any lyric could. Maybe he believed there was nothing left to defend. Maybe he believed that love doesn't always have to end in blame. Or maybe, deep down, he was still processing how something that began with so much promise could dissolve without either of them turning cruel. The world watched. Divided, some fans took his side, insisting that the pressures of fame and distance can erode even the strongest bonds. Others mourned for her, seeing in her composure a woman who had already cried all her tears in private. And somewhere between those opinions lies the truth that love isn't always lost because of betrayal or anger. Sometimes, it's lost simply because 2 people grow in different directions. Now the world is left to wonder, was his silence closure, or was it the confession he'll never say out loud? Maybe it's both. Maybe silence, in the end, is the only honest answer to a love that once spoke in symphonies.